Fancy a bit of space travel? Well, this documentary visits the other planets in your solar system, so hold tight.
Mercury is the smallest planet in the solar system and the closest to the Sun. Mercury is only slightly bigger than the Moon and has a diameter of 4,800 kilometers. It is 20 times smaller and lighter than Earth. Mercury is the closest planet to the Sun. There are only 58 million kilometers between them. A day in which Mercury turns once on its axis is equivalent to 59 Earth days, but it only takes 88 Earth days to travel a complete circuit around the Sun. Mercury has no satellites and no ring. Mercury is mainly made up of iron. It has no atmosphere, and the temperature can fall to minus 170 degrees Celsius at night and rise to 400 degrees Celsius in the day. No other planet has such extreme differences in temperature. Mercury is visible just after sunset or just before sunrise. Mariner 10 is the only probe to have flown over Mercury in 1974 and 1975. It was able to take photos of half the planet's surface. Click on the keys for more information. Click on the planets you want to explore. The Sun is an enormous ball of gas in fusion. It is the star around which our planet revolves. The Sun is by far the largest object in the solar system. It has a mass of 2 billion tons. It contains 99.97% of the matter in the solar system. The Sun revolves around its own axis in approximately 25 days. It revolves faster at the equator than at the poles. Light from the Sun takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds to reach us. We know of 9 planets which revolve around the Sun: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. But the Sun is also surrounded by thousands of small planets, or asteroids, which have a diameter of less than 1,000 kilometers. The temperature at the center of the Sun is 15 million degrees, while at the surface it is only 6,000 degrees Celsius. The Sun is composed mainly of hydrogen. Galileo was the first man to observe the Sun using a telescope. He discovered some dark spots on its surface. These appear near the equator every 11 years and then gradually move towards the poles. Venus was for a long time thought to be a star. It is the brightest in the night sky and is called the Shepherd's star. Earth is also called the blue planet because 3/4 of its surface is water. Contrary to popular belief, there are no life forms on Mars. Martians do not exist. Jupiter is the biggest and heaviest planet in our solar system. Saturn is mainly known for its rings, which can be seen using a simple telescope. Uranus has one extraordinary feature that is different from all the other planets. Its rotation axis is almost parallel to its orbit, so that day and night alternate with the seasons. Neptune's atmosphere contains methane gas, which gives it its beautiful blue color. Very little is known about Pluto because it is the furthest away from us. Astronomers think Pluto may once have been a satellite of Neptune, which broke away.
So what did you think of Mars? A weird place, isn't it? With all those pink and red spaces. It's very weird, but I rather like it. Do you want to know about animals that human beings threaten? I'll show you.
There are between 50 and 100,000 species. There are animals and plants in danger of extinction on planet Earth. This is mostly because man is destroying their habitat and also due to hunting. A number of different species of brown bear once populated a large part of the northern hemisphere. They are carnivores and need vast expanses of woodland to survive. However, man has encroached more and more on their land, and their survival is threatened. Conservationists are trying to protect them in wildlife parks, as in the case of the grizzly bear in North America and the brown bear in the Pyrenees, of which only about 10 remain in the wild. Can you imagine India or Africa without elephants? Between 1980 and 1990, hunters reduced the number of African elephants from 1.2 million to just 625,000. They were killed for their ivory tusks, which were used to make jewellery and other luxury items. The fight against poachers has allowed the elephant herds to grow by 3 or 4% per year. Of all the marsupials in Australia, mammals which carry their young in a pouch, the koala is perhaps the rarest. It can only be found in wildlife reserves, where it lives in the eucalyptus trees, which form its staple diet, and rarely comes down to ground level. Reproduction programs are currently underway in California on koalas in captivity. The fur seal is a species which lives mainly in the northern waters of the Pacific Ocean. There are currently 1.5 million fur seals living on the Pribilof Islands in Russia. However, they have suffered at the hands of hunters who kill nearly 60,000 young males each year for their fur. Certain other seals are also threatened. The monk seal has almost disappeared from the Caribbean and Mediterranean seas, but still survives off the Hawaiian Islands. The grey seal, however, has been helped a lot by the reserves created in Scotland. The Mexican wolf and the red wolf have disappeared from the wild. At present, conservationists are concentrating their work on the grey wolf. Its population is beginning to increase in wildlife parks such as Yellowstone in the United States. In Abruzes Park in Italy, its numbers have increased from 100 to 300 in 10 years. In France, they are gradually reappearing in the Mercantour National Park. Wolves feed mainly on small mammals, such as mice or squirrels. But sometimes they eat larger animals, such as deer, elk, and even cattle. Many species of animals on the Earth are in danger of extinction. This landscape shows them in their natural habitat. Click on the animal.
I'm really pleased that you were interested enough to look for this documentary by yourself. Hold it a minute. I've got this wild idea. Why don't we explore your universe?
In ancient times, men believed that all the stars were the same distance from the Earth. The brightest ones were arranged in shapes in the skies, which represented mythological characters. You are in the Northern Hemisphere. If you click on the icons at the top of the screen, you can change the season and choose whether to look at the sky from the south or the north. Use your cursor to select the different constellations and click on them to get more information about them. The constellation of Auriga is visible in the northern skies in autumn or spring. In ancient Greek mythology, Hercules was the strongest man on Earth. He killed the monsters represented in the constellations: Draco, Hydra, Cancer, and the Lion. Cepheus was the king of Ethiopia and father of Andromeda.
Now, how about that trip to the stars? Exciting, wasn't it? Click here and you're in for something great. It's all about what happens to water on planet Earth.
The water which covers our planet never disappears. It evaporates from the oceans up into the atmosphere, then falls as rain, and runs off the land into rivers to the oceans again. It changes from a liquid state to a gas. It is filtered and renewed in this way by a continuous movement, the water cycle. Thanks to the water cycle, we can use water again and again. The drops of water which fell last time it rained had fallen in many other places before. The quantity of water on Earth will always remain the same, which is why we must be careful not to pollute it. Water vapour in the clouds condenses, forming droplets, which then fall as rain or snow. Rainwater, or water from the melting glaciers, forms streams which become rivers and then flow to the sea. Some of the rainwater also sinks through into the ground. It is filtered through the earth and forms underground reservoirs. Plants contain water. In the sun, they transpire, which means breathe, and gradually release this water into the atmosphere. The lakes, ponds and marshes on the Earth's surface are water reservoirs. The water slowly evaporates as it is heated by the sun's rays. Most of the water in the atmosphere comes from the oceans. It transforms into water vapour due to the heat of the sun. Click on the animations in this picture for information on the water cycle. The seas and oceans contain 97% of the water on the planet. They constantly receive running water from rivers, rain and melting polar ice caps. Plants take up the water they need to survive from the earth. Then they return the water to the atmosphere through transpiration. Running water moves into the lakes and oceans as floods and the normal movement of rivers. Plants take up the water. All the water which evaporates from the ground, plants and oceans forms clouds of water vapour. The snow which falls on high mountain peaks helps to form glaciers.
Funny stuff, water, isn't it? And the way it moves around the planet, that's fascinating.
Throughout history, men have wanted to explore space. You can use this spaceship to travel through time to see the main events in man's quest to conquer space. Space exploration began on October the 4th, 1957, when the former Soviet Union launched the first man-made satellite into space, Sputnik 1. Sputnik is a Russian word meaning traveller. For 3 months, Sputnik 1 orbited Earth once every 95 minutes at a speed of 28,000 kilometers per hour. The satellite was a sphere of aluminium with a diameter of 75 centimeters, weighing 92 kilos. It carried instruments to transmit information back to Earth from the upper atmosphere. The second man-made satellite was launched on November the 3rd, 1957. It was a Soviet space vehicle called Sputnik 2 and carried Laika, a small dog, and the first living animal to orbit the Earth. While Sputnik 2 was in orbit, the USA sent up their first satellite, Explorer 1, on January the 31st, 1958. The first man in space was Yuri Gagarin, a Soviet cosmonaut who left on April the 12th, 1961, aboard the Vostok 1. His voyage lasted 1 hour 48 minutes, and he completed a full orbit of the Earth. Valentina Tereshkova, a Soviet cosmonaut, was the first woman in space. On June the 16th, 1963, she was launched into orbit for 78 hours and 50 minutes on board Vostok 6. On July the 20th, 1969, the Americans Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin Jr. became the first men to walk on the moon. They landed on the moon module Apollo 11, known as the Eagle. Armstrong and Aldrin explored the moon for approximately 22 hours. The module then took off again, and Apollo 11 returned to Earth without any trouble. Skylab, the first American orbit station, was built to study the effects of space on man. 3 teams were sent separately. The first left on May 5, 1973. One of them spent more than 84 days in space. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 space probes were launched in August and September 1977, respectively. Their mission was to visit the furthest parts of our solar system and send information back to Earth. Much of our knowledge of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and some of their moons we owe to them. Voyager 2 flew over Uranus in January 1986, 8.5 years after setting out, and over Neptune 3 years later, in August 1989. In the early 70s, some American scientists began to develop a reusable space vehicle. They designed it to be launched like a rocket and to land like an aeroplane. Robert Crippen and John Young made the first flight in this ship, called Columbia, and took off from Kennedy Space Field on April 12, 1981. After 55 hours in flight, they landed without any trouble. While the Americans tried to construct a reusable rocket, the Europeans based their space program on a new launcher, Ariane, which made its first successful launch on December 24, 1979. On July 2, 1985, Ariane Space, the European company which markets Ariane, put the probe Giotto into orbit. 8 months later, on March 14, 1986, Giotto came within 600 kilometers of Halley's Comet and took some spectacular photos. Ariane 1 to Ariane 4 were a great commercial success. Ariane 5 looks set to follow in its predecessor's footsteps.
That was some journey through space and time. You liked it, didn't you?